Hi, how's it going? I'm Jason Mork, and I'm a welfare scientist at Lincoln Park Zoo. Since we released ZooMonitor back in 2016, I've seen a number of issues about the best ways to get started with ZooMonitor. And so in this video, I wanted to share with you 5 tips to help you along your behavioral monitoring journey. Okay, tip 1. Always remember to download project updates. So here's a very common scenario. You've just downloaded ZooMonitor, you've gone into your admin area and maybe started adding some new observers. However, when you go back into the app, you don't see those observers showing up in the list. So what's going on? So ZooMonitor is a web app, and any change you make in your admin area needs to be manually synced to the app. And so when you do that, all of those updates are stored in the browser that you're using. So this process is what lets ZooMonitor work offline and doesn't require an internet connection when you're recording behavior data. So to download updates, what you'll need to do is click Sync Project Updates in the app from the main home screen, and then click Download Project Updates. Okay, tip 2. Add practice observers to help when filtering your data. So when you're generating reports in ZooMonitor or download your data to manually analyze, you'll generally want a system to sort out the good data that you're going to be using for analysis from the practice sessions. And so an easy way to do that is to set up a special shared user profile for practice observations. So here at Lincoln Park Zoo, we have a profile we use called Volunteer Practice. So we have volunteer observers, and when any volunteer that hasn't passed the reliability testing for a project is expected to use that profile when they're doing their observations. And then when they record those practice sessions, we can easily filter out those sessions from using the built-in reports or manually with the exported CSV file. And after they've passed the reliability test, then we can go in and add their name to the project. And then when they're recording under their own profile, that's the data that we keep for analysis. Okay, tip 3. When you're editing your projects, be careful when adding and removing behaviors. So as you're starting a new project, you'll likely see some new behaviors you might want to include, and others you can probably drop. And at the start of the project, that's generally fine. However, if you've been recording data for some time, making those changes can make it difficult to compare your old data with your new data. So for instance, let's say you had a behavior called self-directed, right? But later you want to split it out into maybe self-grooming and scratching as separate behaviors. So after doing that, if you wanted to later compare that self-directed behavior you had previously to those other behaviors, you would have to combine them to make that comparison. However, you could have another situation, where you change how you're defining a behavior. So imagine you see an animal rubbing their side against a rock, and you first score that as object-directed, possibly. But then later down the road, you decide you want to score that rubbing against the rock as self-directed. So making that type of change is a lot more problematic, as you can't really compare either the behavior before versus after that change because the definition changed. So best practice here would be to, of course, not do that. But in some situations, it could be hard as your monitoring program evolves, right? So to help handle those situations, you can set up a master ethogram. So you can set up a list of all of your behaviors and include behavior categories. And so in that last example I described, both of those behaviors, that self-directed, object-directed, they might fall into the same behavior category. So for us at Lincoln Park, we have a behavior category called other solitary behaviors, sort of a catch-all for those types of behaviors. And so while we might not be able to compare those specific behaviors over time, you can compare the broader category over time as the behaviors have been changed. Okay, and that brings me to tip 4, standardize as much as possible. So when you're starting out, you'll likely not have much structure to your ethograms as you're working out, what behaviors you want to record in the first place, right? And so that's pretty typical. As you start growing your program, though, you'll want to think about standardizing how you name and how you define those behaviors across projects. So one big benefit of doing that is that if you have an observer recording data on multiple projects, they'll likely have a lot less confusion about what the behavior is and what to look for when recording data in ZooMonitor. And this also helps when you're presenting reports to your audience too. As they start to get more familiar with the behavior names you're using, those will be consistent across the different projects. So here at Lincoln Park Zoo, we use a master ethogram that we developed that lists all of our behaviors and organizes them into 7 behavior categories we use. So to help you standardize your behavior names in ZooMonitor, you can add behaviors in the ethogram section in the configuration area in ZooMonitor. So after you do that, you'll be able to then pull up those behaviors when making new projects. All right, last one. Tip 5, start simple. So you can create as many projects, as you want in ZooMonitor, and you can make them as complex as you need. However, when starting out, it's really generally best to focus your projects on specific questions that you have and that people want answers to, right? So it's very easy to get a project going, start collecting data, but it's always important to remember that if you aren't analyzing that data and getting insights out of it that actually are helping drive changes, then it's not really reaching its full potential. Okay, that's it. 5 tips to help you get started with ZooMonitor. So if you have any questions about ZooMonitor, you can check out our support site, or always feel free to email us at zoomonitor@lpzoo.org. If you'd like to get notifications when we release new support videos, be sure to hit subscribe. Thanks for watching.